please stay tuned, because next we will be talking about a man named Pahlavi visiting Israel and saying he represents the Iranian people. Reza Pahlavi, the son of ousted Shah of Iran, arrived in Israel last week on a trip that showed Israeli embrace of a figure who is seeking a regime change in his own country. Pahlavi, who arrived in Israel with his wife, met with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and upon arrival, Pahlavi said he is committed to work for peace with Israel. No idea who actually delegated that job to him, but for sure it wasn't the Iranian people. More details in this following report.
Reza Pahlavi, the son of the ousted Iranian Shah who has been living in exile since 1979 and lives in the United States of America, arrived last week in Tel Aviv on a visit that is the first of its kind to the Israeli entity. Reza Pahlavi arrived in Occupied Palestine to audaciously participate in the commemoration ceremony for the Jewish Holocaust victims that were held in occupied Al-Quds at the official invitation of Intelligence Affairs Minister Gila Gamliel. Pahlavi seemed to still be a prisoner of the complex of history, to a point that he truly considers himself a Shah and representative of the aspirations of the Iranian people, who before and after the victory of the Islamic Revolution categorically refused to deal with Israel in any way, shape, or form. However, this Pahlavi mishap will be a new confirmation of what the leaders of the Islamic Revolution and some leaders of the resistance have always said to the peoples of the region, that the main problem of Israel and America with Iran is its firm position on the Palestinian cause and its support for the resistance movements. Otherwise, the colonial empire and its Zionist puppet have no problem whatsoever with Iran being the dominant state in the entire region. Interestingly, many American and Israeli media outlets have seriously questioned whether Pahlavi can muster support for his return to power, and have also acknowledged that his father had ruled Iran with extravagance and repression, benefiting from a CIA-supported coup in 1953. Before Pahlavi's visit to occupied Palestine, the latter sent a message to Israel via his Twitter account saying, "I am traveling to Israel to deliver a message of friendship from the Iranian people and to engage Israeli water experts on ways to address the regime's abuse of Iran's natural resources. I want the people of Israel to know that the Islamic Republic does not represent the Iranian people. The ancient bond between our peoples can be revived for the benefit of both peoples. I will go to Israel to play my part in building towards that brighter future." However, what Pahlavi failed to remind the public was the stages of the Pahlavi family's relationship with the occupation entity. You see, under the rule of his father, the ousted Shah, in 1950, Iran was among the first countries to recognize the occupying entity in the international arena. In 1961, the Prime Minister of the entity, David Ben-Gurion, visited Iran secretly and met with the Prime Minister at the time, Ali Amini. So did all the prime ministers of the entity of the 60s, like Levi Eshkol in 1966 and Golda Meir in 1972. The Shah was also visited by many officials in the entity, such as foreign ministers, Israeli army commanders, and heads of the Mossad for intelligence and special missions. The economic relations between them developed greatly, and the Shah continued to sell oil to Israel despite the pressures of the Arab countries after the 1967 Six-Day War. Security relations were also very close between the two parties, but the most prominent was the assistance of the entity to the Shah through the Mossad in establishing the Zafak intelligence service, which was famous for its brutal methods in dealing with the revolutionaries and opponents of the Shah. Hence, if anything, Pahlavi's visit to Israel only brought back memories of oppression and brutality to the Iranian people, which they endured under the reign of his father, the ousted Shah.
Now to discuss this issue with us from Tehran is Setareh Sadeqi, political commentator and co-host of Twice Told Tales podcast. Thank you very much, Setareh, dear, for being with us. It's such a pleasure for me to have you on the show. Now, Israel and Iran maintained close ties in the 60s and the 70s under the reign of the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Today, Israel's only connection to the Islamic Republic is the spies and the agents that it sends to assassinate scientists and Iranian military personnel. What could possibly bring Pahlavi's son to the table inside the Zionist entity at this point in time?
Thank you, Marwa, for having me. Yes, as you said, back in the 60s and 70s, the Mossad and the Iranian, or the Pahlavi intelligence service, SAVAK, were working together. And this was brokered actually by CIA, and CIA was active in Iran, and they brought the Israeli intelligence services into the country to repel not only any form of resistance in the region, but also to repel the Soviet Union's power and to cut their hands off of Iran and other parts of the region. But it seems that the Pahlavi or the Reza Pahlavi has forgotten how Iranian people ousted in his father, and how his father was hated by Iranian, and why there was actually a popular revolution back in 1979, because Iranians were actually fed up with that monarch. And as I said, like Mossad and SAVAK, the Iranian intelligence service at that time, worked together to torture Iranian dissidents during Pahlavi, and the documents showing how they worked together and how they tortured Iranians are really horrific, and people just can go and search and see how they actually were trained by Mossad to torture their own compatriots and people of their own country. And now we're seeing Reza Pahlavi coming back to the scene, probably, I would say, because he's looking for new sources of money. It seems like after the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, Saudi Arabia has withdrawn some funding sources for so-called Iranian oppositions outside Iran. And this is why Pahlavi is looking for, not only Pahlavi, but also probably we're going to see MAK and other so-called oppositions looking for other sources of funding to stay alive. Because as you know, their project which started from September and ended in January with the riots inside Iran failed. And now, of course, they're not going to sit down, and they're going to look for new ways to meddle into Iranians' affairs and to wishfully think that they can, in some sort, change the government, the legitimate government that is inside Iran.
Setareh, what was interesting was that Pahlavi touted a message of seeking to overthrow Iran's rulers by tweeting, and I quote, "I want the people of Israel to know that the Islamic Republic does not represent the Iranian people." Now, besides that actually, end quote, besides that actually being laughable, because it is a democratically elected government, but on what is he basing his confidence in regime change, given that the US has literally lost most of, if not all, of its influence in West Asia? What is he counting on?
Exactly. Well, I think these people have been so detached from the realities on the ground, and that they do not understand how they're hated by not only Iranians inside Iran and the majority pro-government Iranians, but also there is no consensus among those so-called opposition forces. Like there is Pahlavi, there is the MAK, there are different fractions that are seeking, or they're saying that they seek to overthrow the Iranian government, and they do not agree among themselves either. And this is something, I actually read a report by the Israeli intelligence services doing some sort of calculations, which I would call miscalculations, about what has been happening inside Iran. But there are a few points that I would say I wish the Pahlavi would read about them, and that's the one thing is that there is no consensus among the opposition. They do not agree on anything, on how to overthrow the government, on who to replace with them. So he is not even popular among the so-called Iranian opposition. So it's amazing how he feels he could have any public support inside Iran. And you can ask Iranians of any political orientations or religious orientation, and they will tell you how they also hated Pahlavi, and they even among those I would say minority that would want a different type of government inside Iran, they do not want Pahlavi back because they have not forgotten how his father and his grandfather tortured Iranians, killed Iranians, massacred Iranians on the streets when they were protesting. And I think he needs to review the history of what his father and his grandfather did.
I think that's the problem here. I think that Reza Pahlavi is still a prisoner of complex of history, and he considers himself a Shah and a representative of the aspirations of the Iranian people, which people I have no idea. But these people that he speaks about, they have previously and many times refused to have any kind of normalization with Israel of any shape or form. But for the sake of sanity here, for the sake of discussing this unusual, provocative visit, is there any chance that Pahlavi could muster support inside Iran for his return? I mean, even if in a small amount?
Absolutely not. He's not popular. He, as I said, people here have not forgotten their history. They remember how he and his father, I mean, probably his father mostly, and his grandfather, how they toppled the democratically elected government of Mossadegh by the help of CIA, how they tortured Iranians. And no, I don't think there is any chance he could become popular inside Iran, or he could return to Iran, even among those who do not want or who want a change in the political system of Iran. So we see a lot of wishful thinking and miscalculations from his side and the Israeli side, I would say. And I think from the way he was treated by the Israelis, you could say that they're actually not really counting on him either.
They don't believe him either, really. Well,
exactly.
That's coming from an Iranian from inside the Islamic Republic. Ladies and gents, I want to thank you very much, Ms. Setareh Sadeqi, political commentator and co-host of Twice Told Tales podcast. You can find her on Twitter, and you can find her on her own podcast as well. I will be sharing along with the video her links. Thank you very much for being with us, Setareh, and hopefully we keep up bringing you, ladies and gents, the latest from the region of West Asia. I want to thank you very much for watching us, and please do follow us on Telegram and on Twitter for the latest from our region. I'll see you again next week from a new episode from the MidStream. Assalamu alaikum.